of a Jedi Knight. Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age. For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. Before the Dark Times. Before the Empire.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. My name is John Mark Tolly. Joining me today, as always, are my two co-hosts. Over here is...
Oh, you're pointing at me. Garrett K. Jones.
And also...
Brian Karasek. Hello, everybody. Gentlemen, good to see you again.
Good to see you, too.
Yes. And, of course, by the intro video, you can probably guess what we are talking about today. Yes, that's right, blast doors.
Yes. Wait. Man, you guys keep confusing me. Now, we're talking lightsabers today. You know, that elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
I'm so jealous of both of you. I have none.
That's a Savi saber?
No, this was actually Hasbro. I picked this up in Target in 2007, fall of 2007.
Beefy. It looks like a water bottle.
Yeah, it's huge. But this is one of the cooler ones. It actually collapses down into it, and it has the sound effects and everything. I picked this up. I was doing a radio class, and we broke into doing projects on doing like radio dramas. And the group that I was with, we did Star Wars. And so I picked this up specifically for some sound effects.
Nice.
You're going to do it. Go big, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
This is my Hasbro saber. No surprise, it's a Sidious.
Oh,
I got a.
shocked.
This is an interesting accoutrement here. This is a 3D printed sleeve. If you go on Etsy and search for lightsaber blade sleeve, it's 3D printed to fit the tube so that it's red even when it's not turned on, which I think looks better for display.
Yeah.
that's cool.
Very cool.
So today we are going to be talking about the sabers that we have, or in Mark's case, doesn't have.
I have a Lego one.
That counts.
That counts.
Yeah.
It's a lightsaber. But we're also going to be talking about the lore. We're going to be talking about the behind the scenes type stuff, as well as talking about the construction and stuff like that goes into it. So Brian, let's open it up with you, because usually you kind of hold back, and well, you don't hold back, but you wait for someone else to say something, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on this.
I got my first real saber. Like I have a 3D printed Sidious hilt that is all black that I think looks nice, and then I have a resin model one that I painted that looks okay. I'm not a painter, but I got my very first Sidious hilt a couple of years ago. It's a Corbanth Sidious 2, which I just got it empty, no electronics. It's on a display in my office at work. I got it. I have 4 different Sidious sabers now: the Hasbro FX one, the Corbanth one, and then I have one that I got. It's an LGT saber. I'm gonna pitch. You know, I like the details. You guys know who this is?
I recognize the statue.
Yeah,
this is one of the 4 sages of Dwartai, Jedi sages from the ancient times, and Palpatine canonically has 4 of those statues in his office at 500 Republica. It is made out of, not mine, but Palpatine's is made out of uranium, which is a metal so dense that it affects gravitational fields nearby it. And again, canonically, Palpatine keeps his lightsaber hilt hidden inside it. The metal is so dense, it's the only way he could get the weapon past the weapon screening. So I found a maker on Etsy that makes sets of these. I only got the one because I keep my other saber in it.
Nice.
So, and that is a deep cut that not every collector would go for. And in fact, I reached out to the crafter. I saw he was making sets of them. That's Sistros, by the way, is the one that Palpatine keeps his in. But I found this crafter who's made sets of them in various sizes, and I reached out to him. I said, hey, would you be able to make one of these large enough to contain a void of these dimensions inside it? And he immediately responded, are you making a lightsaber case? Yeah, if you'll do it. And he's like, absolutely. And it's amazing, great work. And he's severely... Pay more. I'll pay more. No, it's okay. It's cool. He said, do you mind if I sell it? So it's currently listed. If you look for Sistros lightsaber case, then you can find him on Etsy. I'll send a link out if you like. But I also wanted to share, this is my personal one. This is the Devil Hilt. I obtained it from Kyber Cave, a distributor with whom I work. It comes with with a Profi board. And so it comes with several different 20 different sound fonts on it. I of course have this one. But it's a quite nice piece. I really enjoy it. And it's got your standard effects there, but I really like this claw feature up at the top.
It definitely makes it look a little bit more menacing and dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite. Although one thing I was surprised at is it has this captive ball in the hilt, which moves. So we get some jingling. I might actually switch it out for a bell here come Christmas time. But it also has a lot of different options.
Darth Santa?
Such as, yeah. Let's see, here we go.
That's cool.
Oh, cool.
And I won't go through all of them. This is a good one. I like the slow start ones.
That's a nice one. I like that fluctuation in the blade.
Yeah. That's what a Profi board can do. There's whole apps you can go. I think it's through Arduino and program an unbelievable. Like I have one will start up slowly. It's like flash, flash, flash. It's kind of like you're trying to turn it over. So, but that's my Devil Hilt, or as I call it, the lightsaber of Darth Karasek, my Sith alter ego. And as I'm fond of saying, the only thing I wrote in 8th grade that I still like.
That's pretty cool.
Yes.
I have some more. I won't break out, but I got I guess the first time I went to Disney when they had the lightsaber build your own. I think of it like a Sunday bar, and I went kind of berserk. The lightsaber I made there is a double-ended one, which is a Vader saber on one end and a Kylo Ren saber on the other. So it's this giant saber staff. It's some non-canonical nonsense that I won't abide it, but it does look good on my wall.
So back in about 2011 or 2012, I went to Disneyland, and I after going through Star Tours, I saw that they had the build your own lightsaber kits, and I decided I was going to build one. And so this is the base model that everyone got. Mm-hmm. I've taken the panel off because I basically, like, as we're starting the episode, I basically cored everything out and just put it together and to show everything. But like, you get 3 crystals: blue, green, and red. Now I personally keep the red in there, inside the setup.
Brian's looking at you like, good.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
There's a reason behind it. Because one, depending on which crystal you use, and the way it's shaped, it will actually affect what sound effect you have. Which is kind of cool. But then I put in the blue crystal next, followed by the green crystal. And the reason why I do that is because in doing so, I'm actually I like my blade is actually a purple blade. And as everybody is prone to knowing, unless you're colorblind, purple is the fusion of red and blue.
Yes.
So it's a nice, happy medium. And then as far as the rest of the components, I have this very nice little sleeve here with a little knob on it. I've got this piece right here. Oops, I've got them upside down.
I would also call it the fusion of Mace Windu and Jules Winfield.
Yes. Although I'm pretty sure that Samuel L. Jackson really became Jules after his encounter with Prince Akeem in Coming to America.
Oh yes.
And then I've got this little ring. It's just basically like a light ring. Put that on there. This beautiful reversible grip.
Nice.
One side is hollow, the other one is not. And then the end cap, which I like the pommel on this end cap just because it's very basic, very clean. I treat the bulb itself as the emitter with a Maul-esque emitter.
That's nice.
And then it comes together, and I love it because it is clean, it is sleek, and you can use it in the reverse grip.
Excellent.
And so when the blade is part of it, you can see how it works. And so I've had this one. The only other one that I have is one of two pieces for a double-ended saber that was purchased by my mother, of all people, as a wedding gift for me and my ex-wife. This was a lot of couples do Unity sand, or they pour Unity water, or a Unity candle. And I said, nope, screw that. We're a Star Wars family, because it was her idea to do a Star Wars themed wedding. So I'm like, and we have this beautiful anodized aluminum aircraft quality dueling saber.
Nice.
What was the source of that? It looks like an Ultra Saber.
It's an Ultra Saber.
Yeah.
No sound effects to it, but and it's got instead of the end cap, it has the connector. The other half of it is stored in my bedroom closet. And what's crazy is this is like when it's all connected with the blades and everything. This thing is so long I can't even walk down a hallway. Like the only place I can safely use this is outdoors.
I bet a machine shop could actually get you a connector that's just a staff, so you could end up with one of those lightsaber pikes like the Temple Guards have.
That'd be pretty cool.
When me and my wife got married, she drew the line at Star Wars wedding, but she did allow for a slight Star Wars themed reception. So we got a bunch of like the really cheap Walmart laser swords, but she had them. She ordered them from like I think it was Amazon or something. So they were pink and white because that was the color of our wedding was pink. So they were pink lightsabers, and we went through the sword when we went in. We went through the sword through the that, and then there's also we took some pictures of the bride's grooms and the wedding and the wedding part, the groomsmen having a lightsaber battle outside, which was pretty cool. Of course, the girls won.
We had a very traditional wedding, but there were two nods to Star Wars in that my wife is okay with me entering to the Imperial March, which
I got bless her. 1 second. Continue talking.
And we had a 3-piece orchestra. Let's see, it was a violin, cello, and a horn playing at the reception, and I did get them to play a figure and Dan in the Modal Nodes'
that's
chart
cool.
topper. I wanted to mention there's a lightsaber I have too that it's one of my more unique ones. Years ago, I read that if you ask the right person at the Lego store at Disney Springs in Orlando, they will make you a lightsaber out of Lego, and there's no charge for it. Ask them nicely; they'll charge you for the Legos, but the service itself is free.
That's
and so,
cool.
Funny story. I'm an old Navy recruiter. I profile. I can't help it. I guess who I might need to talk to. So I went to the Disney Springs store and I found one of my people, the guy you would expect to be the lightsaber crafter. Little overweight, bit of a beard, receding hairline, ponytail. And I said, excuse me, I understand that if I ask the right person, you guys might make me a lightsaber out of Legos. And he said, oh yeah, you need Lee. And he gave me who would have been my second choice. Asian guy, man bun, China, or chemical symbol tattoo on his neck. And he made me this piece, which has since become my Palpatine stand. But it's a really nice, simple little design.
So cool.
Very
And then just a row of my Lego Palpatines. This one here, I know I've shown you this, guys, but for the folks watching at home, this fella here, this is a foreign market knockoff. They don't make a hologram Palpatine minifig that's an official Lego one. And he didn't come with a cape, but I did find a store in Albuquerque years ago that had a cape. This is an Elsa cape. So this is Palpatine wearing Elsa's cloak.
Nice.
And
I knew it.
He can forgive us. And I do want to call your attention to the Christmas Palpatine from last year's Advent calendar.
Yes. So I know this is kind of off topic, but you're talking about wedding stuff. This is what my wife allowed for the groom's
Oh, wow. Cake. I like that.
Oh, we had a dog at the time, so R2 was the dog, and yeah, little Leia and Han Solo.
A good friend of mine has a dog named Boba, which he says people will periodically ask him if you really like the tea, and that's how he knows they're not friends. That's a good buddy of mine.
Yes, that would be grounds for ending a friendship.
Yeah, well, or not beginning one at the very least. Like he's talking about at the dog park. People are like, "Oh, Boba, do you like the tea?" No, get out of my office.
Yeah, I do the same thing whenever by just saying hello there, and if they do not respond with General Kenobi,
yeah.
Well, my standard joke for my Star Wars involvement is if Star Wars comes up, I'll say, yeah, I mean, I'm a fan, but like not crazy. I'm real baseline, you know. I don't try not to make a big deal about it because people do get too far into it, and people usually laugh and smile. I say, I just like 9 lightsabers and 2 full costumes and 300 collectibles of the Emperor, and I work on a podcast. I've done some voice acting, just like real baseline stuff, nothing major. And then they just slowly fade away.
Yeah.
But I do have a friend who has a basement, and in his basement he has every Clone Trooper helmet Black Series in a case. He has a platoon of 4. I think it's still 4 stormtroopers, different styles, but Imperial era stormtroopers on mannequins at attention, and they are flanking Darth Vader. So he has 4 complete stormtrooper armors and a complete Darth Vader armor, all of which are posed in formation in his basement. And sometimes I show my wife pictures of his basement. Like, see, what he does. I'm not too crazy with my 3 little shelves of Palpatine, no big deal. She's like a great baseline to set 5 full costumes. Yeah. It's probably like $15,000 worth of vacuum molded plastic in his basement. But to his credit, he still fits all those armors, so you gotta give him credit.
That's funny. So let's move on to from talking collectibles to talking lore and the mechanics of lightsabers.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, how did you guys respond when you first saw a lightsaber on screen?
I was only 4.
Yeah.
So my natural reaction was limited by the fact I hadn't yet entered puberty, but it was an equivalent response.
That's great.
Honestly, like I think I've said this before, because of my age, being the exact age of Star Wars, Star Wars was just something that was always kind of around. So it was just something that was like, by the time I started watching it, it had already been kind of, understanding it and getting into it. It had been a part of the zeitgeist of society for years. So I don't remember, physically remember the first time seeing a lightsaber. It was just
always a thing.
It was always a thing. But I do like, I've always thought they were one of the coolest weapons in in fantasy and science fiction and space, whatever you want to, however you want to, classify Star Wars as.
Yeah.
Because
media,
so,
the coolest weapon in media.
Yeah, because they're just so unique.
Well, and I think one of the things that made it stand out for me is just the fact that, like, at the time there was really nothing else like it.
Yeah.
I mean, you had phasers on Star Trek, you had some other form of energy-based weaponry on whatever it was that was coming out prior to it, but nothing.
But always projectiles.
Yeah.
Right. Those were all projectiles. And like the lightsaber itself was so iconic because like although like it made me wonder, like, because of the design between Anakin and Vader's lightsaber. I mean, it was the same design, the one that Luke carried for A New Hope and through Empire Strikes Back. Like, at what point did Luke ever look at the hilt that he was carrying and the hilt that Vader was carrying and be like, these look really similar?
That's like seeing somebody else's Honda, though. You wouldn't assume it was your dad just because he's driving the same Civic.
Yeah.
This is true.
Luke had a very small sample set.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a theory about that with the sequel trilogies, that I think it seemed that the Knights of Ren only had one saber between them. In the very few shots we have of the Knights of Ren, Kylo Ren's saber is always the only one pictured. And so when we talk about Kylo Ren's saber fighting style, I don't think he had a lightsaber dual opponent prior to The Force Awakens. Like, I mean, who's he fighting? Control panels and restrained old men are the only people that he's been used it against. Yeah. Presumably, there's some sort of droid situation training, but
and he had training before.
I guess I don't want to get ahead of myself, but
he had training with Luke. The little time he was with Luke, I'm sure he had training.
Yeah, that's true. The it's kind of
the thing about the lightsaber is it in a lot of ways it encapsulates Star Wars in. Are we having technical difficulties?
I have no idea. I'm pulling out a book.
Carry on. Just switching ears.
Yeah. Okay. It's a lot like Star Wars in the fact that it's a good mix of old and new. The lightsaber is a weapon that it feels, in many ways, ancient and classic, being a sword, but it's a laser sword. So it's futuristic, which is kind of what Star Wars is this, mix of the futuristic technology, but still set in an ancient time.
That's true. The thing I liken to with regards to the whole structure of Star Wars and the use of lightsabers is that if you go back to the hero's journey, what's very interesting is that when you're in the first act, right before the hero actually steps out of their ordinary world and into this new experience with their mentor, there's usually some point where the hero is granted or quested to find a sword. You see this in King Arthur. You see this in a lot of other very popular media. Harry Potter does it because, I mean, if you look at the plot threads of Harry Potter when compared to Star Wars, they're literally the exact same plot beats, just different circumstances. Instead of a sword or a lightsaber, it's a wand, some kind of handheld object of power. And the lightsaber,
also a sword.
He is granted, yes, the sword of Gryffindor. But you see this in storytelling.
Sorry, I'm just picturing a hero being sent to the local shop to pick him out a sword. Go to Ollivanders and buy the sword you like. Get a good one.
Yep. Make sure it's not made out of hammered iron. It's gonna rust really easily. Don't ever get it wet. Anyway, so it follows that tradition in storytelling of heroes seeking out some item of power, usually a sword, to help defeat the enemy. Which is
Vader
interesting.
goes on that same journey in the comic books, the new Marvel canon. He's sent to go get himself a saber. A Sith is not given a lightsaber. A Sith takes it.
Yes.
Right. Which, yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. Like, because usually the final test of being a Jedi is being able to, in order to attain knighthood, is to build your own saber.
Yeah.
Is to craft it. And the Sith, they just take.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually the path of least resistance, although it might be a little bit more challenging if you don't have a saber and you're going after someone with one.
Yeah.
Particularly, I mean, at that era time in galactic history, anybody who had a lightsaber was more than likely a Jedi who'd been training with it for decades.
Yeah.
Right.
Specifically in Vader's case.
Oh yeah. So
I was
go ahead, Brian.
skeptical on the change to lightsaber lore when Disney came out with the change from synthetic kyber crystals to blooding the crystal.
Yeah. I was too, but in a lot of ways, I think it fits more into Sith lore and the way the Sith act. I think both of them are believable ideas for how the Sith work. You know, the fact that the Sith, aren't the idea that the Sith aren't in, a natural thing. And that they would use synthetic, but at the same time, also the idea of bleeding the crystal is something that, like you, I was kind of skeptical of it. But the more I really think about it, it really makes sense that this is what a Sith would do. Like
I came around on it pretty quickly once they started getting into the storyline of it.
Yeah,
yeah, I like that too. Although I think probably one of my I would like to have seen more of that being demonstrated, because the only bit of that we get on screen is that one scene at the end of the Acolyte.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how is what Osha does or experiences so much more wrath-filled and hatred-filled than anything that Anakin ever did? I mean, he slaughtered whole clans of Tusken Raiders. He killed younglings. He murdered who knows how many people in cold blood, and his crystal stayed blue.
Yeah.
To that, I would say that his anger and rage was focused outward. He was using the lightsaber as a tool, but it was not the recipient of his hate. To blood the crystal, the Sith must focus all their anger and aggression, focus the dark side on the crystal itself. You're not using the tool, you're torturing the tool.
But Osha wasn't even doing that. All she was doing was holding it.
Yeah, the Acolyte had some problems.
Focused on it. She was focused on killing Soul.
Yeah.
And so I think unfortunately, while it's the only encounter we have it on screen, it's a weak application.
There are some tenuous strands between canon introduced in the comic books 10 years ago and canon introduced on Disney Plus last month, or in the last few months. But that would be the explanation of why Anakin's didn't give way.
Yeah. Because every time
the real answer is we hadn't made that up yet, so we didn't include it in episode 3.
Right.
Yeah,
but that's a little too metatextual if we're going to live within the canon.
Well, and the times that I've seen it done, with bleeding crystals in comics, the person's usually holding the crystal, has taken the crystal out of the lightsaber, and they're holding it in their hand, and physically, like you said, putting everything into that crystal to cause it to crack and to cause it to bleed.
And that's the same thing that we see with the reverse of it when Ahsoka cleanses the crystals.
Yeah. Turns them white.
Because she removes them from the saber.
Yeah.
She is the only character we've seen do that. Am I wrong in that?
As far as I know, she is.
I believe so. Yeah.
She is an exceptional Jedi. Just force power is unheard of and unpracticed in anyone before or since, as far as we've seen. Always impressed with. I mean, you got to give Filoni credit for that. He's just like, she is the Messiah. She gets every power.
I have to admit, I loved the lightsabers. The first time I saw them in Jedi, not Jedi, but Rebels, that was one of the, I really, really liked the lightsabers. It was so different because
she's an icon.
We'd seen the black saber we'd seen, we need to get to the black saber here in a bit.
Dark saber.
The dark saber, yes. You don't like the dark saber?
I do.
I love the dark. I like it because it's such an interesting design. It looks like a sword. I think that's what I like about it is most of the other lightsabers, they got that kind of rounded thing. The dark saber looks like a sword.
Is a blade.
It looks like a blade.
Well, and you know what's interesting is if you go back to through the lore of Star Wars, even prior to the High Republic, the weapons that the Jedi used that were precursors to lightsabers. Well, the first thing you had were these, like you had regular swords that were made of a special metal that could cut through a lot of different things, and you could imbue it with force energy. But then they moved on to energy-based weapons, but they had to carry a battery pack with them.
The Walkman-based lightsabers,
right? And then we get then we get the version that we're familiar with for like the next 2,000, 3,000 years, something like that. But I mean, the thing about the dark saber.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the thing about the dark saber that I think stands out the most is the fact that it was designed by a character who was a Mandalorian originally, and that was kind of an interesting bit because like we got the I pulled. There we go. And so the design of this weapon is so very Mandalorian. These very hard lines, very streamlined and very efficient. It's very utilitarian, which is exactly how the Mandalorians would think of weapons in that time.
Yeah.
And just going back to the come on, why is my computer being like this? There we go. Like just the idea that it is designed specifically for like it wasn't just a lightsaber. This was a weapon that became iconic even on its own homeworld.
Yeah.
Where it was fought over by Mandalorians, Imperials, Maul, who by far was probably the most practiced wielder of it after its original designer.
Tar Vizsla.
Tar Vizsla.
I don't know how to say it. Tari.
It's Tar. It's Tar Vizsla. Yeah. I think let's get into a little bit about. I pulled this up here of lightsaber color meaning, so we can kind of get into the.
Well, if it's blue, you're calm. If it's green, you're peaceful. If it's red,
purple, you're horny.
Take off.
This is what it says. It says the blue lightsaber represents a Jedi who utilizes the Force on a more physical level, skilled in combat. Jedi wield blue lightsabers to confront evil directly, contrasting the red lightsaber of the Sith, which symbolizes wickedness and rage. Blue lightsabers embody qualities such as strength, loyalty, and determination. Their wielders are known for their courage in facing adversity and their commitment to confronting darkness, and often do so at great personal risk. The green lightsabers represent peace and represents a Jedi's decision to foster goodwill and cooperation throughout the galaxy. Jedi who wield green lightsabers strive for a universe where harmony prevails. Green lightsaber users typically excel in the Force and prioritize negotiation and diplomacy over combat.
But didn't all they get decanonized with Disney?
Maybe a little bit. I don't know.
I've never been a fan of that because whoever makes the lightsaber can then lose it. and get so by that canon, like is General Grievous, he's using blue, green, yellow, and blue.
Yeah, I think this mean like when the Jedi gets their crystal and they because I think it's still canon that a kyber crystal automatically starts out colorless, and then it's the Jedi who puts
source for that other than just conversations, but I believe that had been decanonized and it's legends only.
I know because this thing has mentions Rey, so I don't know. This is on lightsaberblog.com, so.
Well, it's all fiction anyway. I won't argue the point, but I was always sketchy on that just because I feel like I don't like color coded for your convenience. Stuff like that. Like I was never a big fan of like all red dragons are evil, all gold dragons are good. I think that it's needlessly limiting in the story. Asajj Ventress's post Sith lightsaber was yellow, which I think follows,
which is reminiscent of the Sentinels.
Yeah, Jedi Sentinels.
I'm also not
yellow.
Now that I mentioned, I'm not confident she made that lightsaber herself. So. I would like to circle back on the Darksaber just to say that first off, my opinions on the Darksaber are my own, and I don't think anybody's wrong to disagree with me because most people do. I don't care for the fact that this one unique lightsaber is the only one that anyone's ever made, and it was made by a Mandalorian who was a Jedi. If we're looking at the colors of lightsabers as indicative of the creator's spirit or will or their presence in the Force, what does a black carving blade represent? Like it's not
death.
Yeah, exactly. It deviates from the norm in a lot of ways. I didn't care for it being such a key part of Mandalorian culture, and I've never been a fan of. I always liked the concept, I should say, that it takes the Force to use a lightsaber effectively because one slip and you've lost a limb or a head. I mean. As someone who plays with lightsabers myself, I've whacked myself on the head more than once, which would have been an instantly lethal blow. So I do think you should have to have the Force to use it effectively.
Yeah.
But you know what really bugs me, and this is just purely personal? Sidious has it in his possession for like a minute. When he defeats Maul and Oppress, he takes Maul out and leaves this Darksaber behind. Like it seems like that level of Palpatine was famously a collector of artifacts. You'd think that would be high on the list, but he just whatever. But that was my objection to the Darksaber is I think that it's way too cool to have the backstory that it does. I think it should have been. It seems like an evil weapon. I don't care for it having been crafted by a Jedi, and I don't care for it being the symbol of power for the entire planet.
What's interesting is though, like we don't know much about Tar Vizsla. And like
I know that a Vizsla is a very cute dog. I made a meme. It's just a puppy of those things, and I called it Pre Vizsla. And then the next panel is Pre Vizsla saying that is not funny.
I mean, like there's not much to him. Like he gets discovered as a child around 1050 BBY. I mean, that's more than 1,000 years before the main canon of events. And it's like, what the heck? Like,
and what's he done for us lately?
Well, not just that, but like, I mean, this is a character just like Darth Revan, who stands out as a fairly mysterious character that we would like to know more about. And we get virtually nothing about him. Like screw like a second season of The Acolyte or Skeleton Crew. I want to see more of this guy.
I think Ancient Mandalore is a rich mine of information. That would be interesting to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
and I would like to go on record again as saying I want nothing to do with Darth Revan and don't want him in canon ever again. I don't care for I don't care for first person shooter protagonists being weighed against canonical characters. Looking at you too, Darth Nihilus.
I will say this. One of the things I like as far as video games, though, in the use of lightsabers, first and foremost, I kind of like the way that the Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor games allow you to literally piece together your lightsaber. You can, as you go through the game, you collect different components, different crystal colors, and you can actually develop and build your saber to work the way you want it to work, which is really cool. And for me, I'm a big fan of symmetry. So when I was playing through Fallen Order, I would design it to look as close to being symmetrical as possible. And it does have a really unique design to it where the two ends can be disconnected from each other. One is longer than the other and can still be handled with two hands, while the other one is like a small, like dirk style handle. But it's not like Smilo Ren's where where it disconnects from the hilt to have a hidden blade underneath. But in like the Force Unleashed, one of the cool things is you can go through and collect holocrons throughout the course of the game. There's Jedi holocrons that glow, they're cubes that glow gold, and then you have red pyramid shaped Sith holocrons, which give you like a temporary power up or boost to your energy. But one of the holocrons that you can find on board the Death Star in the first game provides you with choices for doing a black or white crystal. And it's just an aesthetic. It doesn't affect how the lightsaber operates in gameplay, but it's really a fun aesthetic. With Force Unleashed Part 2, you get more of the gameplay effects as far as like what the crystals do, as far as like with force powers and how you work in conjunction with them. But in one saber you can have a white crystal, and the other you can have a black crystal. And I'm like, ooh, it's cookies and cream.
Garrett, as a Cal Kestis player, I actually have a font on my saber called Cal Kestis, and I don't really know what it does. Is this indicative? Well, that's not really exciting.
I couldn't really hear anything.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah, that sounds like exactly like Cal's ignition.
Cool. I had never activated that one. When I turn it, when you select it, there's one button to select, and it makes like a particular sound indicating what the sound font is, and that is a woman's voice saying "Cal Kestis." I had a hard time with the Force Unleashed. I played it on a Nintendo Wii.
That's your problem.
Well, yes, but my wife very kindly bought me this cool peripheral. It's a snap-on to the Wiimote that makes the Wiimote into a lightsaber, which is really cool. Except when you put it on the Wiimote, the lightsaber blade, it goes on the Wiimote, and then the blade folds up and locks in place, at which point it blocks the sensor, which means using this licensed peripheral the way it is intended to be used, you cannot play half the game. You can no longer use force powers because that's how you use the sensor to like grab force things and throw them around.
I played it on Xbox 360 and
upgrade.
Definitely. And you can use the saber in conjunction with force powers. One of my favorites was actually when you go into you can do what's called a Sith Shin, where you it's a specific series of strikes, and when you hit it just right in conjunction with force lightning, it supercharges the blade, and anything you strike with the blade and it's in the surrounding area will then shoot out a cascade of electricity along everything else.
I've seen video of that. It looks amazing. I never pull it off in game, but it
was a lot of fun. You could also the other thing is you could use it almost like a super powered baseball bat. In conjunction with force push, and you sit there and just you swing around, and then you go into for one final strike. Instead of striking your opponent with the blade itself, you're actually using the force and sending him flying. You can do the saber throw, which is always effective, really good. And you can do what was one of I can't. There's another one that you can do that I thought was really a lot of fun, but it was it's where you do a force pull and then you impale them on your saber.
I will say, since I came out so strongly against video game characters, I will say that Cal Kestis is definitely an exception to that. Everything I've seen about that game, I don't have a device that would play that game. That same Nintendo Wii is the only console I have at the house, or a Super NES as well. But having seen a number of my friends play to an extent, I'm a big fan of that game in particular. But
it's a relatively fun game. I liked it. There's a lot of exploration that you can do, different routes that you.
I love a good sandbox.
And the sandbox is not like it's. I would say it's probably about 80% sandbox, because depending on which planet you're on and which route you're going and what you're looking for, it will change some of the areas where you've got access. But once you've accessed all those areas, you can just go back to the map and find all the things that you need to find, as far as like chests and data entries and stuff like that.
I know myself too well to let me play that game.
Towards the end of the game, if you're playing through campaign, you actually go to the Fortress Inquisitorius, and it's
Rise of the Red Blade, one of my favorite books.
It is, you actually break in through an underwater hatch and you go through the whole thing, and it's very linear. Like, you go in, you come out. There's no in between. And you face one of the Inquisitors as a boss battle, and she's tough, really tough. But then you face Vader too, and he's almost unstoppable. And that's even on playing on the easy mode. In fact, it gets to the point where you actually have to run away from him, and he's chasing you through the corridors.
Mm-hmm.
I was already into Arthurian legends and Dungeons and Dragons and swords and sorcery type stuff when I first saw Star Wars, even at 4.
Yeah,
and when I saw Vader light that saber up, it was perfect. It was an armored knight. It was everything I loved about swords and sorcery installed into everything I loved about science fiction.
Yeah,
and I was hooked. I was done. That's all I needed. And I don't know if anybody's noticed this here behind me. This is my daughter's. When she was 5, she drew this picture of Palpatine for me, and I'm instilling it in her. You know, the lore of the lightsaber is fascinating to me. You know, never just the how does it made of it all is really cool. At first, I remember trading stories in grade school of, well, they use the Force to contain. It's really just a blaster, but they're using the Force to hold the bolt in place, and that just never felt right to me. I just like. It's just a laser sword. Just let's not discuss it too much and get on with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do like the idea that you guys have and I agree. That the idea that I think it was you said it, Brian, that to wield the lightsaber correctly, you have to have the Force. That it's such, because I mean, if you think about it, you know, you're just basically have a hilt. You know, the lightsaber itself, you know, theoretically would have very little weight to it. So like most swords are weighted, so you can feel that weight going around. Although it's interesting.
I mean, 90% of the weight of a sword is its blade.
Yeah. That when you hear people in canon talk about holding a lightsaber, they talk about how it feels weighty. Like they can feel the weight. Now, I don't know if that's the Jedi having the Force flow through it, so they, you know, it's just an automatic thing for a Jedi, or if it's something,
some kind of gyros in the hilt to make it feel like that.
I know that Brian's not a big fan of the darksaber, but one of the things that I thought was really interesting, especially once we get to the last part of Mandalorian season 2 going into season 3, Mando can't use the darksaber. Like every time he tries to use it, it does not work for him. Like it starts getting heavier and heavier and heavier, whether he's got it powered on or not. Like it feels like a weight for him. Whereas Bo-Katan, like she picks it up and she's like, I can do this, no problem. So it makes me wonder.
Is that like a Mjolnir thing where he's not worthy, or?
they don't really explain it in the show, which is kind of a bummer because like that's like one of those things that I would have liked to have seen. Like they like
we'll get more
out
than
the
won't we?
episode with Jack Black and let's get more of him trying to practice with the darksaber. Trying to figure out like that should have been part of it. That should have been part of the biggest part of his quest for season 3. Not just finding, not just returning Mandalorians to their homeworld, but figuring out how to use the darksaber. And instead of just passing it off to Bo-Katan and being like, here, you know what? I can't use this. You be the leader. I don't care.
Doesn't she still have to kill him though?
Yes, she does. Or she at
It's
least
like Harry Potter wand rules, right? She's got to defeat him, or it's never truly her.
That's what makes it so. That whole thing is still confusing to me because at the end of Rebels, at the end of the Mandalorian saga on that one, doesn't what's her name just give the darksaber to Bo?
Sabine?
Like Sabine basically defeats Maul, gets the darksaber, has it.
Don't get me.
Unites, tries to unite the different clans, and then just says, "Here you go." And Bo says nothing about, "Oh, you have to defeat me first." Just like, "Oh, thanks." And then suddenly you get to Mandalorian, and it's like, "Oh yeah, you have to defeat me now."
Yeah, it's like very, very confusing.
I'm envisioning a scene where Sabine hands the darksaber to Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan thanks her ceremoniously, and then Sabine turns around and Bo-Katan stabs her in the back, like, "Hey, sorry, that's the rules. I know you're just a teenager."
I think I do remember, if I remember correctly, Sabine did not defeat Maul for it. She stole it. They go to where Maul was, and they sneak in, and she takes. So therefore, the whole thing of her having to defeat, because
we know how it got in Moff Gideon's hands?
Hold on a second before we jump onto Moff Gideon. It says here in Star Wars Rebels, Sabine Wren retrieved the darksaber from a Night Sister lair on Dathomir during the Imperial era. Sabine later gifted the darksaber to Bo-Katan Kryze after the two joined forces to destroy an Imperial weapon. The blade fell to Sabine, who became the new owner simply by picking it up. Lame.
Mm-hmm. So she never actually defeated anybody. So therefore,
you could make the case that her stealing it from him counts as him losing to her.
No, that's lame.
I know it's lame, but I'm trying to, sometimes we got to do a little bit more homework for these guys.
They should just hire me to be a writer then.
By the way, Giancarlo Esposito should be in everything, and I'm so glad to see him in Mandalorian. I loved him in The Boys, loved him in Breaking Bad, loved him in everything. But do we know how he got the darksaber? Because while I complain about the lore of it, it is objectively a cool
after the night of 1,000 tears. After the night of 1,000 tears, the Empire desecrated Mandalore, and Bo-Katan surrendered the darksaber to Moff Gideon, hoping the Empire would stop the Great Purge of Mandalore.
Everybody knows how reasonable the Empire is.
Yes.
Seems like, of course, they would do that. Yet again, another plug for reading The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, where we see the lengths to which the Empire will go just to eliminate everybody who saw them do anything bad.
Right.
On a planetary basis.
Shucks. Gotta love those Imperials, right?
Yeah.
Well, I remember, I'm sure you guys did too, I had one of the inflatable lightsabers that, it had like a little Walmart flashlight in it, and you'd blow it up, and like the blade was translucent, and it got real sticky really quick. That plastic degraded rapidly. From there, it was just pool noodles wrapped in duct tape for most of my childhood.
Nobody wants a sticky saber. Oh man. Okay, so
I was
gonna say, before we wrap up, because we're coming up on an hour here. We're gonna just go around really quickly. We're gonna list our top 3 favorite lightsabers in all of canon, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
Sound like a plan?
Mm-hmm.
All right, John, go.
Number one, Anakin's. That's number one. Number two, Luke's second. The green lightsaber. That is the one thing I do remember being so just blown away by was seeing that green lightsaber, because before that, if you'd only had blue, and then suddenly you were like, oh, it's green. They can be different colors. And of course, Maul, double-bladed lightsaber, so iconic. So very cool. So those are my top three: Anakin, Luke second, and Maul.
Cool. Brian, what about you?
Sidious is the first one. Its very design is a mockery of the Jedi. Jedi lightsabers are tools. They're used in extremis, and they're utilitarian devices. The design of Sidious is art, it's craft. And the fact that it's a work of art as well as a weapon is a way of Sidious twisting the knife in the very concept of the Jedi weapon. Second one would be, yeah?
I was going to say, even with the gold plating that he has on there, that was reserved specifically for Jedi who did something really, 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 really noteworthy and noble.
I like attention to detail, and when Sidious messes with you, he messes with you to the nth degree. Gotta love it. Second favorite, I'm going to say Dooku. Dooku's was the first curved hilt lightsaber I ever saw. Bane canonically had used those in the books. I'm not sure if that has stuck within the post-Legends era, but the fact that he was a duelist first and foremost, and one of the greats, I think it's just an interesting style, and I like the uniqueness of it. And then I got to go with John Mark on Maul. The dual-bladed lightsaber was, when he popped that second blade out, everybody in the audience was just like, "Oh well, of course. Why?" Interesting though, whenever we see new technology in Star Wars, it is often portrayed as an ancient weapon that's been recreated. So, like even Maul's, it was the first time we saw it, but it was a 1,000-year-old plan.
Yeah. For me, definitely Darth Maul is a number one for me. Just because of the double-ended saber. Like, it was mind-blowing. Like, growing up and reading through the lore for the Star Wars role-playing game, like, I had the book on weapons and technology, and when you get to the section on lightsabers, they have your standard lightsaber, the single-bladed hilt, but then they had one design for Exar Kun, which I like. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's the guy. That's a character that I've heard of. And unfortunately, it wasn't that same character, but it was a similar design. And it just, I'm like, man, I recognized that. I locked in, and I thought it was super sweet. My number two, just because it was probably the first lightsaber I ever saw on screen, is gonna be Luke's green saber. I love that. It was iconic. And I like the fact that he tried to honor Obi-Wan by modeling it after Obi-Wan's own saber. But as far as designs in all of canon, I would have to say that my third favorite is the design by Cal Kestis, where it's meant to be a double-ended saber. You can wield it with a single blade, or you can wield it with double blade, but it has that ability to disconnect for specific hurricane type moves when you're dual wielding. And I really like that ability to disconnect it even on a temporary basis.
Great picks, both of you.
Yeah, same to you.
I wouldn't surprise anybody with my picks, I'm sure.
No.
If
I said anybody other than Sidious, I'd be like, what's wrong with you?
Yes. Who are you and what have you done with Brian? I almost put in Obi-Wan's in there too, just because it's such an iconic. Yeah.
All righty.
All right.
I think
great chat. I'm really glad we got a chance to dig into this too, because like between collectibles and the lore of it, Star Wars arguably wouldn't really be Star Wars without lightsabers in it.
No, it would not.
If you, in fact, I think several times in my life I've mentioned Star Wars, and even the most sabers, it's what sets them apart. Only Thunder the Barbarian comes close.
Yes. I don't think I've ever watched Thunder the Barbarian.
That's a deep cut to the Saturday mornings of my youth.
All right.
All right.
Well, Brian, why don't you tell everybody out there where they can connect with you?
Come connect with me on the Sith Library and Archives on Facebook. It's a lovingly curated Facebook page containing all of the architecture, literature, lore, and even sense of humor of the Sith. Come join me out there. I post as Darth Karasek, and I've got several other admins who work with me who are really doing the heavy lifting these days. Come see us.
All right. As for me, you guys can find me on Instagram and X at GKJ Publishing. I talk about my books, The Archives of a Sync Ran, which is a currently 5-book fantasy series. I also talk about my show on YouTube, The Right Way, where we talk book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. I have my first full monthly episode dropping this Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I have great guest hosts and a great interview with suspense and horror author Calvin Ellis, who has his new book out now.
All right. As for us right here, of course, you can check us out. If you would contact us, warthestars1@gmail.com. Our Instagram is at war_of_the_stars1. We are on X at warthestars1. And of course, we are on YouTube at WTS77. We are also a member, Ko-fi.com/War of the Stars. You're going to support us that way monetarily, or you can go to our Spreadshirt shop, spreadshirt.com/shop/War of the Stars. Of course, you can check us out. We are on Feast of Fandoms. You can check us out there. Check out all the other shows of Feast of Fandoms on their YouTube page and other places like that. And we will be getting, next week, we'll be doing our review of Solo, a Star Wars story, and looking into that movie. I believe that is it. I don't think there's anything else, of course. So join us next week. As always, remember, this isn't just my Star Wars. This isn't just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.